Welcome back to Yahoo Finance. Well, Apple set to report first quarter earnings after the bell amid a sharp pullback in the tech sector recently. The stock was up, but now is lower today. But year to date is down more than 12% after crossing that $3 trillion benchmark at the start of the year. Here with a preview of what to expect is Wang, Constellation Research Principal Analyst and Founder. Ray, thanks so much for being here. So you have a 200 price target on Apple. You own the stock yourself. Results today include that all-important holiday quarter, and I'm wondering, what are your expectations? Of course, all eyes on the all-important iPhone sector. Everyone watching closely to see what sort of issue supply chain and chip constraints had on that sector. And last quarter, it lost $6 billion in sales.
Yeah, so we're expecting anywhere between 117 to 119 billion in sales. That's about a 6.5 to $8 billion increase. And as you know, they generate 100 billion in free cash flow every year. So we're in the middle of this upgrade super cycle. And whether it's 5G, whether it's the need to get more devices, whether it's the need to upgrade along the way. And we saw some great indicators, like Apple became China's top selling smartphone in Q4. I mean, taking 23% market share. But the other area we're spending some time taking is really looking at services revenue growth, right? Where is that going? And, our estimates, we look at it getting to 25% by 2025. And we just saw the announcement today about iPhones to be payment terminals. This is going to be adding to this.
And then how important are those sectors for growth? Because that is where we're seeing the biggest margins, right? And obviously margins a big story this earnings season. Wondering also what you're thinking about operating costs as it tries to retain talent.
Yeah, no, I think margins are still going to be good. As you know, in the tech sector, margins have been pretty good in general, and they kind of outweigh any interest rates, changes. So I don't see, I see that continue. I see operating costs continue to come down, but there is a war for talent, especially for tech talent, metaverse talent, AI talents, mapping talents, designers, product folks. So I think that's going to continue across the board. But I think Apple's managed to weather that fairly well. On the issue of supply chains, I think that's interesting because Apple has specialized chips and specialized contracts. And so I think they have priority with a lot of chip manufacturers. So they've locked in those specialized chips. And I think those supply chains have mostly been mitigated. There have been some slight hiccups along the way. But in general, they've been doing better than most. So.
And then what sort of guidance, Ray, are you looking for as far as it comes to growth and innovation as well, and getting around those chip supply constraints?
I think everyone's a little bit cautious because they don't know what happens, especially given the way the zero COVID policy in China has affected a lot of organizations because that's affected shipping, ports, supply chains, manufacturing. And so you're starting to see a push in general by a lot of international players to actually move to onshoring, getting their supply chains, manufacturing plants locally. You just had someone talking about that earlier as well. That's going to be a continued trend, but those things don't light up right away. They take 2 to 3 years to get up and running. But we do see other growth potential. I think all eyes will be on WWDC in June to see any hints of what might happen in the metaverse, what will happen with AR, VR, glasses. And I think people will be looking to see, what direction Apple takes there. And then, of course, any two types of services that are going to be launched. And of course, we're seeing a lot of demand for laptops, devices powered by the M1 chip. That's made a big difference, especially in terms of performance, battery capabilities. And of course, if you're crunching a lot of interesting things in graphics, AI, and other areas, especially doing these kind of calls, getting that HD camera is pretty cool.
And then what do you see as far as any competitive concerns as tied to its Apple TV and its music? I know Spotify has a case launched by the European Commission.
Yeah, so there's going to be continued battles for streaming revenue, battles on patents across the board. I think it's something that's been consistent across the tech industry for quite some time, especially when dealing with big digital giants. But I think aside from other types of regulatory concerns there, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities to see what happens in new markets as areas get decentralized, and more importantly, how new startups are formed and how they can plug into different ecosystems. So I think there'll be a lot of watch there on anti-competition and where that goes within this administration and the DOJ.
And then despite the pullback, do you consider Apple to be a defensive buy at this point, at least midterm and long term, and investors should still stick with it despite short-term volatility?
Oh, this is definitely buy and hold. I think a lot of people, it is more than a defensive stock. For those that see it as defensive stock, there's definitely there's a lot of upside in terms of growth. I think the services revenue growth is the area where we spend a lot of time looking at because all the new services that are being added to the device and the device base. The premium brand element is very important. I think if you look at the Chinese numbers, that was very interesting to watch. The premium brand loyalty became very important in the mix. And then, of course, other forays into areas around healthcare, what happens with mapping, potentially if there's any other type of mobility or vehicles at play, that makes that part the growth aspect of where Apple is in their product line and services line lineup.
I think a lot of eyes on Apple today and hoping that it can give the tech sector the boost that it needs and that it's looking for. Okay, we will leave it there. Wang, Constellation Research Principal, Analyst, and Founder. Thanks for your insight today.